Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of Scott's Selections here for Sunday, August 18th. Before we get into the leans for today, we'll quickly recap what happened yesterday. Unfortunately, we picked up a loss with the Dallas Cowboys in the first half, -3.5, which was available at -101 at Pinnacle. Line actually climbed all the way up to -108 at Pinnacle, so we got value on it. But unfortunately, the Cowboys ended up pulling a fast one with their quarterback depth chart without telling anybody. And instead of Cooper Rush playing immediately after Dak Prescott, it turned out to be our arch nemesis, Mike White, over there, who was absolutely useless in yesterday's game. Cooper ended up leading the Cowboys on a touchdown drive in the second half, as the Cowboys ended up covering the full game spread, but were unable to cover the first half spread. It was unfortunate because of the fact that Cooper Rush was healthy. He did travel with the team, and the Cowboys just decided to give Mike White extra reps in the second quarterback position, and that ended up screwing us over. Mike White specifically went 7 of 13 for 30 yards with 0 touchdowns and 1 interception. And Cooper Rush went 10 for 16 for 83 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. And Dak Prescott also went 5 for 5 for 64 yards. It was unfortunate, as we were right about Cooper Rush and Prescott, but Mike White ended up playing in the second quarter, and that absolutely just destroyed us. However, in terms of their defense, they look pretty good. Bortles was great, which I did not see coming. Brandon Allen, their backup quarterback, wasn't great. And Wolford was okay at best, not great either. But either way, we ended up picking up a loss, which is unfortunate because of the fact that I feel like we handicapped the game right. But the Cowboys just switched up their quarterback depth chart without telling anybody, and that is why we ended up losing on that game. But in terms of today's card, not really a fan of anything. And I know that some of you are going to get upset about that because I've given out some lean videos in the past, and that hasn't been that well received. But I'm not going to force a pick here that I feel like hasn't been well thought out, and I'm not really a fan of anything. The main game I was thinking about giving out was going to be on the Giants against the Diamondbacks, but money's poured in on Arizona, and I'm not really sure why. So I'm personally going to skip that game. So I'm just going to skip it, and I'll give out my leans for today's card. How's it going, Jeff? How's it going? Thanks for joining us. How's it going? How's it going, Darius? How's it going, Johnny? In terms of the leans, quick question, though. What do I think of between Cleveland and New York today? I'm going to have to lean to Cleveland here. Clevenger is just the better pitcher. CC's coming off the IL. Plus, if you did witness the ejections that happened yesterday, this is kind of funny. The first base umpire who ejected CC Sabathia from yesterday's game will be behind home plate today, and CC is pitching. So that's kind of petty, and I don't know if that's going to lead to a shorter strike zone for CC. But every umpire, it seems like in today's baseball, has some type of God complex, and I wouldn't be surprised to see the umpire who ejected CC yesterday, who's behind home plate now, is a little bit stricter on CC's strike zone than he is on Clevenger's. I'll lean to Clevenger anyway. Overall, I think it's pretty tricky. But at the same point, I just think that I think he should have retired already. And I think that Clevenger has looked really solid over the last couple of starts. CC's an unknown, but Cleveland's offense has the ability to just put up runs in bunches. I think Ramirez will play well today. I think Lindor will play well today. I know the Yankees have won each of the last 2 games, but their starters haven't exactly looked great. Tanaka looked pretty good, but Paxton looked awful yesterday, and Plesak just looked worse, and that's the only reason why the Yankees were able to win. I think CC will struggle. In terms of where I'd lean, I'd look towards Cleveland's first 5 team total over potentially, because I really just think CC will struggle. But in terms of the game itself, I'd have to lean to the Indians on the money line at roughly -123. And that game actually just started. In terms of the Cardinals under, that's a question from Robert. Yeah, honestly, since I'm not giving out a play that I was going to give out leans, if you have any questions on some matchups, just hit me up in the comment section, and I'll end up covering those for you. In terms of the Cardinals game, let me just look at that. Sorry, hang on a second. Between Flaherty and Wood, I'd have to lean to the under 9 there. Flaherty has actually looked really good in his last start, and Wood has looked pretty solid since coming off the IL. I know the Reds have Aquino, who's been great so far in his young MLB career, and I know that Suarez is also a threat. Other than that, though, not that many big weapons in the lineup. Cardinals also, they're a team that success is predicated on its pitching and their offense with their lineup, and you don't really have many serious threats. I know Goldschmidt has been really good over the last couple of weeks, but is Carpenter really the same player that he was last year? Not even close. You don't really have many big bats in the middle of the lineup. I'd have to lean to the under 9 there. In terms of weather, though, I'll actually look up the weather in that one, which is the most underrated factor in determining a total. So if you actually are betting on totals in games, don't forget to look up the wind, as that is definitely a crucial factor that that affects the actual outcome of the game. In terms of the wind, doesn't look like it's that bad. It will be very hot, though, with some humidity of roughly 98 degrees, which should help the over. But in terms of the Cardinals game, small lean to the under on that one. Nothing really serious, but I would lean to the under on that one. In terms of the Mets and the Royals, total's been bet down from 10 to 9.5. In terms of where I'd lean, I'd have to lean to the under, just solely based on how the offenses have performed so far this series. They played 2 games so far in this series, and both teams just simply can't score. I don't know what it is, but the Mets, after that series against the Braves, in which their offense went nuts, they ended up going up against Kansas City, and they don't know how to score. And the Royals' offense has been terrible all season long. Yeah, in terms of the first 2 games of the series, both games ended at a score of 4-1. And Wheeler has actually been really good ever since his name has been circulating on the trading block. Mets ended up keeping him, but overall he has looked pretty solid. His last start, he wasn't great against Atlanta as he went 5 innings, gave up 5 earned runs. 2 starts before that, though, 15 combined innings, 0 earned runs. I think he should pitch well in this one. Sparkman's inconsistent. He's hit or miss, but at the same point, he has been decent at home this season. I would lean to the under on that one. But in terms of where I'd lean in terms of the actual sides, I'd have to lean to the Mets on that one. I know they're roughly minus 176. I'd have to lean to the Mets anyway. Maybe minus 1.5, maybe first 5 minus a half. I definitely don't want to touch the Mets bullpen, as I hate that unit with a passion. But at the same point, I do think Wheeler is a significantly better pitcher than Sparkman. And I think that the Mets, after winning yesterday, will look to win the series and to try to climb to within a game of the NL wildcard game, while the Royals have nothing to play for. So that is just something to keep in mind. Question from Johnny, in terms of preseason football, where do I lean between the Chargers and the Saints? In terms of this game, I've actually looked into this game in depth, and I really just didn't see much value on it. It is worth mentioning, though, that money has poured in on the Saints ever since the opening line, as the Saints opened up at +3, and they were all the way up to -2.5 in this game. So you've had roughly a 5.5 point swing on the Saints -2.5. So if you want to follow the line movement, which appears to be sharp money, you should take the Saints. In terms of what I'm thinking in this game, I don't have many thoughts, but I would lean to the Saints, I guess, because of their quarterback depth. Even if Breeze doesn't play, you still have Bridgewater and Taysom Hill as their backup quarterbacks. Taysom Hill, I know, is more of a gadget player than an actual quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater, who has been a starter for a couple of years, I know he had that brutal injury with the Vikings, but he has experience, and Taysom Hill also has experience in the NFL, as he ended up playing last year and was one of the more unique players in the league last year. The Chargers, on the other hand, their backup quarterback is Tyrod Taylor, who's pretty solid. Cardell Jones, not great. Not a lot of accuracy there, but he has been, I don't know, I guess serviceable as a backup quarterback in preseason. And then you also have, I believe their third string quarterback was Stick, who ended up playing against the Cardinals, who I just wasn't personally a fan of. You had Stick, who ended up going 7 for 11 for 78 yards with 0 touchdowns, 1 pick. So I guess I'd lean to the Saints based on where the money's come in from, but I personally don't have any thoughts on the preseason. In terms of my leans, though, I will lean to San Francisco with the Giants with Bumgarner versus Kelly. Money's coming on the Diamondbacks, I guess because they're trying to avoid a 4-game sweep. But at the same point, I just simply have to lean to the Giants here. They've won the first 3 games. Bumgarner's been unhittable since the All-Star break, and I think that they will get the job done in that one. In another game with the Cubs and the Pirates, money's come in on the Pirates after Keller pitched really well against the Angels in their last game. I mean, I think I'd have to just lean to Cubs first 5. There's no way I want to touch the Cubs bullpen at this point in time. I know that they did shut out the Pirates yesterday. I hate this bullpen. This bullpen's terrible. They showed it in the first 2 games of the series. They showed it against the Phillies when they gave up 6 runs in the 9th, and they also showed it in game 1 of the series when they ended up walking the bases loaded and ended up blowing the game against the Pirates in that one. I do think Quintana's a much better starting pitcher than Keller, though, so I would lean to the Cubs on the first 5, potentially -1.5, as I think the Cubs will perform well in the first 5. I just want to avoid their bullpen at all costs, so that would be my lean on that Cubs game. In terms of the rest of the betting card, Where would I lean here? This might sound a little bit bold. I would lean to the under 13.5 on the Rockies and the Marlins game. Yamamoto, is he a great pitcher? No. Is he serviceable? Yes. And overall, I just think that Miami's lineup isn't good enough to score roughly 6 runs. I know that Lambert hasn't been great so far in his young MLB career. He hasn't been absolutely abysmal. And I think that that's what you're looking for when you see a total of 13.5. I think if this game's going to go over 13.5, I think the Rockies need to score at least 9 runs. It is possible, but realistically, I see this game ending somewhere in the realm of 7-4, give or take. I think that this game will get over double digits, but I simply just don't see this game going over 13.5. And those will be my 3 leans on the MLB card. In terms of another question, Johnny wants to know what I think of the Seahawks and Vikings game at Vikings -3. In terms of this, I'd have to lean to the Vikings because of the fact that the Vikings are just usually really good in the preseason with Mike Zimmer, as they ended up winning once again in week 1. However, if you are betting on the game, I recommend live betting the Vikings, as it has already been determined that Russell Wilson will be playing roughly 1 quarter for the Seahawks in this game, and I think that he will play well because of the fact that he is Russell Wilson. So based on that, I think that Russell Wilson will play a quarter. I think if you want to bet the second half on the Vikings, you can. Geno Smith is currently questionable, so nobody really knows what his status is. But their backup is Paxton Lynch, who did play well in the first preseason game, but I don't think you really want your money on Paxton Lynch. And the Vikings overall, I know Kirk Cousins will be playing for at least a series or 2. Backup quarterbacks did play well in the first game against the Saints. They have Sean Mannion as their backup, who has been the longtime backup for the Rams, so he knows what to do in preseason. You have Kyle Slaughter, relative unknown, but he did go 6 for 7 in the first game, and Jake Browning, who I personally don't like. So in terms of track record, I would lean to the Vikings, but in terms of the actual game, I think you're better off waiting until the end of the first quarter and then potentially live betting the Vikings, because I don't want to go against Russell Wilson for a drive or a quarter, as Russell Wilson should be able to score at least some points against the first unit of the Vikings. So based on that, I would lean to the Vikings -3, but I think I'm just going to skip that in the beginning and then dive in for a live bet potentially after the end of the first quarter. However, that's going to do it for this installment of Scott Selections here for Sunday, August 18th. Before we conclude today's video, quick reminder of our sponsor, PointsBet, all in sportsbook in New Jersey. A couple of great deals for you. Up to 2 risk-free bets up to $1,000. If you end up betting on sports and you end up losing, you simply get your money back, which is a great promotion that I wish more sports books would use. In terms of tomorrow, I have already been looking at the card, and there will be a play today for tomorrow. But in terms of today, I apologize once again, but I simply just didn't like the card, and I just wanted to give you my feedback on it anyway, even though I wasn't confident on anything enough to give it a play of the day nomination. But other than that, though, good luck to all of you and your respective bets today. Bye, everyone.